So rather than making Joe hold on to these throughout the interview, we'll put them aside
Thank you
there.
very much.
And a selection of books penned by Joe are there, along with his high school yearbook, which we'll talk about a little later, which Regina Feeney helped pull from our archives.
Fantastic.
But back on track here, you said you worked at the library in 1988?
Yeah, so I don't remember the exact year, but it was, I think it was a little earlier than that. But yeah, it was my first job ever. So this was my bona fide first job. The closest thing I ever did to a job before that was my dad tried to get me to help them make coffee at Dolly's. If anybody remembers Dolly's, you'd have to be my age or older over in Baldwin, Rand Avenue, at 4 a.m. on Sundays, because that sounded like a good job for a 15-year-old. And it didn't work out. So this was my first job.
Does anyone remember Dolly's for the record? I'm not hearing any applause.
No.
That would be
It was not a great.
So rumor is, and by rumor I mean your Instagram post to promote this event, that you met your wife Gina while working at the Freeport Memorial Library.
I was a very upstanding youth from Freeport, and then I was corrupted by my now wife Gina, who's over there being embarrassed. Yeah, we worked together in the refuse department, and she was very kind enough to put up with my shenanigans and become my friend. And our circles of friends kind of got mushed together and led to really all the sort of stuff that I don't know if you grew up on sort of John Hughes movies and like all the great 80s stuff. That's how I think about my childhood, including all the bully kind of stuff that was of that time. But it was that's what high school felt like, and it was because of her and her crazy friends who we're still friends with today, which is all good. So we would not have our beautiful children or this crazy life if not for this building. So I'm very, very happy to be here. It makes it extra special for me.
Yes, I will give an applause break to that one. So in walking Joe around the library before we started this programming, he knew a lot of the people who worked here. Would you say some of these people were here in 1988, also fellow high schoolers at the time for Freeport?
Yeah.
Got it.
Absolutely. No, it's an institution, and it's always been a fantastic place for the community and for us. And Gina lived right down the street. I mean, it was always a special place.
So I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to rhetorically ask it to you anyway. So these days, we have a great collection of graphic novels and comic books and so forth. Did any of that exist in Freeport Memorial Library in 1988?
I don't think so. We did have the massive magazine racks, and maybe there would have been one or two things there back in the day, but not so much. Not so much. I mean, it was a big deal when we could rent movies at the library.
Yeah.
Right. So those VHS tapes. But yeah, not so much. Graphic novels were still very niche. We used to go, again, in Baldwin, right across the street from Dolly's. Used to be a place called The Incredible Pulp. And that was the comic book store that I grew up going to.
That actually was something I was going to ask. Were there multiple comic book stores in the Freeport area when you were growing up, or was there that one in Baldwin?
There's primarily that one in Baldwin, and then there was one called Cosmic Comics over in Rockville Center, which was notorious because the owner smoked in there. And you're in a room full of paper, and smoking seemed like a good idea. So my kids used to know that it was the stinky comic store. That was for a long time, but it's not there anymore. Or it's actually, there's a new version of it, different owners.
So besides those comic book stores from your childhood in Freeport, what were some of the stores or restaurants that you remember frequenting besides this wonderful, wonderful establishment like the Freeport Memorial Library? We're going to keep saying that for SEO.
Yeah, we were just talking about Italian food recently, and about how you can go to a place and the Italian food can be great, but if it's not the Italian food of your youth, you might not respond to it properly. So Sal's Wander Inn for me, that was where we went. That was like after a chorus concert or something, like that was the place we went to. So that was huge for me. And then after I worked here, my next job was at Bobby Rubino's, And Bob Rubino's has a warm place in War as well, just because a lot of tomfoolery happened. We were all busboys and waiters and did a bunch of nonsense there. So that was very fun. And other than that, Byers Diner, if you remember Byers, there's some people going. Yeah. So we used to go there. That was the scene of a very good embarrassing story where I embarrassed my mother. So that was a place we went there a lot. Mm-hmm. Woolworths, I used to actually used to love to go eat at Woolworths. So yeah, I remember all of that. So I mean, really, I grew up in North Freeport, so I was on Wilson Place. Mm-hmm. That's where I was. So we didn't actually go south that often. I don't think my parents liked seafood. Well, I know my mother didn't. My mother didn't like seafood at all. My dad liked it, but yeah. And then he worked at the moorings a little bit. Mm-hmm. For a little bit of time as a bartender. So yeah,
So one more Freeport question, then we'll talk a little comics, and then we'll give people here a chance to ask some questions if that's fine.
Of course.
So a joke Freeport question, a real Freeport question. The joke one, any run-ins with Flavor Flav?
I didn't, but she has.
Okay, well then
I never got to meet Flavor Flav. Yeah.
One of these days. So ultimately, how does a person from Freeport who has the normal teenage jobs wind up in the comics world? Now I know that is a long answer, but was it an internship that was the conduit or the transition for that?
So I was always into the arts and writing when I was in Freeport, going through school. I tried to continue to do that into college. I went to Binghamton undergrad as an art theater major. Ultimately, I majored in drinking. So I graduated with a philosophy degree, which sort of dashed a lot of my creative hopes. And then I went to work actually for my now brother-in-law, who was a commercial producer. And I learned sort of my way around production. So I would drive trucks through Manhattan and work on sets and do all that sort of stuff. And I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. And I thought I was going to maybe go into visual effects or be a prop type, prop designer, prop person. But you kind of cap out of that job relatively quickly. You sort of, unless you specialize, there's not much more to learn. So then I thought, well, I'm not really built to carry heavy stuff. So I'm going to also apply to school and see which way it goes. So I was finally ready to be a student. I applied to NYU. They had a dramatic writing master's. So it was specifically for theater or screenwriting. And I wanted to try to write movies. So I went in for that, got in there for graduate school. And then the second year I was there, Marvel Comics had some young editors and they just wanted to meet new talent. They were sort of tired of getting the same people all the time. So they reached out because one of them was a graduate and I helped run that program, mostly because the director of our program was sort of a playwright with a capital P. She really had no interest even in television, but let alone comic books. And the secretary of the department, her assistant, had said, there's a letter with Spider-Man sitting on a desk and it's going to go in the garbage. Like, you might want to check it out. So I stole the letter and read it and then found out, oh, they want to start this program. So then I volunteered to, hey, I heard Marvel contacted you. I know about comics if you'd like to know about comics. So I helped run the program. And it was the two editors teaching us the Marvel style of writing, starting with dialogue and working out into world building. And they liked what I was doing dialogue-wise, and that led to my first job. So very much lucky to be where I was at that time. Otherwise, I would not have gotten in that way. I had tried to get into DC Comics at one point. I have a very nice rejection letter, just like anybody else that's ever tried to apply for something. So I've got those. But yeah, if that hadn't gone, then I probably would have tried my hand in screenwriting. But we had a lot of roots here, and I wasn't quite ready to make that move either. So it worked out very well. Publishing is still primarily in New York, but the comics were very much so at that time.
So I find that most, and I'm putting you on the spot here and pigeonholing you. So most creatives within the comic world have a number two interest behind comics, and it's usually either music or wrestling. Were you one of those?
Not really, no. I was definitely not a musician. We did, we liked wrestling okay. No, I always thought I was going to draw. Like that was what I really thought I was going to do. I wanted to be a visual artist. I was hoping to draw comics, but no, mostly it was being a knucklehead. That was really my fallback. Yeah.
So these days, comic books, the biggest movies in the world are largely based on comics. And I find that comics were still a niche thing in the 80s through most of the 90s. When did you start to notice that comics were mainstream, that it wasn't hidden the way that people have to hide that they like wrestling or people have to hide that they like soap operas? Now everyone is extremely out about loving comics. So is there a particular year or era where you started to notice that?
Yeah, I mean, it started a very slow transformation with that first Batman movie, right? So the Tim Burton Batman, I feel like started to get people going like, oh, comics are interesting. Like there's something about the source material. And around that same time, I remember my dad showing me the newspaper because the Dark Knight, Return of the Dark Knight, which is a graphic novel, was double page spread in the newspaper about, oh, Batman is, as you've never seen him before, he's edgy and dark. And sort of the end of the 80s into the 90s brought about a time where people wanted to treat their superheroes as very real. It was this sort of postmodern, very dark time for comic stories. So you had Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen. They were very seminal books. And I think that's when it started creeping out to people that there was more going on, that these were literary works, not all of them by a long shot. But it started to change things. And then comic conventions migrating from hotel lobbies into actual venues.
Yeah.
That sort of late 90s kind of time. So I would say, yeah, somewhere around there is where it started to change, in my opinion. So, and of course, meanwhile, the industry was kind of dying, which was perfect. Marvel had just gone bankrupt, like shortly after I got there.
You had nothing to do
I had nothing to do with it. There was this big, crazy bubble of investors, and then they all went away, and that bubble burst, and there were a lot of business decisions that were made poorly. But so it was kind of a great time to be there in many ways because the rules were all broken, so you could sort of try new things. But it was also challenging because everybody was afraid for their job, which led to all sorts of changes that when I actually left Marvel and wound up working at DC, it was for, reasons like that. But yeah, I never would have thought when I sort of think back to, if I told my 7-year-old self, like, yeah, people are going to wear comic book characters on their shirts the way people wear sports teams, like the sport wear Giants jerseys. I wouldn't have believed it. Yeah, it's been very fun to see it. I think the only the worst part about it is just that the creators not getting to participate in that over the course of time has been a continuous, thumb in the eye to people working in the industry. People that predate me by many, many decades, but who created things that we all know and love. I just wish they were taken care of better. But other than that, as a fan, it's a great time to be a fan. It's been wonderful to see it change.
And in terms of your career, I don't know how good you are at taking compliments, but you helped revitalize Deadpool, you helped revitalize Amazing Spider-Man, etc. Is there still a character that you're hoping to get to work on that you haven't had the chance to work on yet? Something obscure that we may not know?
Yeah, there's some obscure characters I would want to work on. I've been very lucky to get to work on a lot of the big books. I worked on X-Men, I worked on Spider-Man. Currently, I'm on Amazing Spider-Man, which is a dream job. I've done the Justice League. I never wrote Batman solo, but that would be fun. But I wrote Superman for a long time. So I've done a lot of the big books. The weird book that I would do it's called The Spectre. It's like a horror superhero. That's one I really dig. I like horror. When I first got into comics, an uncle had given me a box of comics that I read over and over and over, and a big chunk of them were horror books. So there was a lot of Spectre in there, and Witching Hour, and House of Mystery. There was all that sort of stuff, and very much seeped its way into my brain, into my very dark sense of humor and story sensibility. So, yeah, it would be that. But I've also been lucky enough to do some creator-owned books, and that's really, if you can make a living at it, that's sort of the dream, right? It's very hard to keep those books afloat, but if we can do it with our characters, that's sort of the goal.
Creativity question, and then we're going to go to the wonderful patient audience. Okay, I'm curious about this. When you are creating, when you're in creative mode, what is your atmosphere like? Do you have a space that you have to create in, or do you just create wherever you are and we can go write something right now?
I'm sure that Gina will call me on my nonsense if I say anything not true here. It's mostly anxiety and a lot of self-loathing. That's a big part of it.
But you're not a comedian.
That can happen anywhere.
A comic artist.
Yeah,
yeah.
That can happen anywhere. No, I have an office at home. I often write there, but I go through different periods. For a long time, when I was taking my kids to school, there was a Panera nearby, so I would drop my kids off, and then I would go to Panera and write there for 2 hours. And I just found that worked for me. I say that I like systems, but I generally fall apart every time. I'm like, oh, I'm going to write from 9 to 12. It gets ruined almost all the time. But I know when I'm on the roll. And when I'm on a roll, I try to protect that whenever I can. So the office is very helpful to that. In our first house, my office was the attic. We did it up and everybody knew, don't come up to the attic. Let Dad work. And I've always worked from home, really. The Panera aside. I've always worked from home. I've been very lucky to get to do that. I mean, that's one of the great blessings for me of this job was that, we would talk to our friends and the dads would be learning about things that their kids did because they were at work, and I could see that stuff in real time. And that was very special, so I have no regrets about that. I mean, it was a great gift of being able to work from home. But I write all over. My brain is in like 5 different places. I have like a whiteboard with note cards, and note cards go in a box sometimes, and I write on the iPad and I write on the computer. It's just wherever I can catch the ideas before they go away, because I used to be good at remembering those things. And now if I have a great idea as I'm falling asleep, if I don't type it immediately into my phone, it's gone in the morning. So I do everything I can to just keep it. And then I thank myself in the past for having written it down. So yeah, it's a little bit of a mix.
Gina, is that correct? He said he didn't want to lie about anything or be inaccurate. Is there a Panera involved?
There's a Panera.
Okay, cool. So moving to some questions here. I saw some nodding about Spectre. Mr. in the Deadpool shirt. Do you have a question?
One joke question, one real question.
Please.
Real question is, I heard about the philosophy of drinking degree. How much of you are we getting in your rewrites of Wade Wilson? Like, how much of him processing his ethos and his conundrums, his complexes, you and things you thought about in your own mind? That's the real one. Joke question is, as a writer of Spider-Man, are you guys ever going to let Peter be happy? Like, ever going to be happy?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. I love Peter Parker so much. It's not even funny. Part of the love is that you have to torture him. But I'm trying. I'm trying to look for where the happiness can come. But it is a fair question.
Right.
And for just in case people don't know, Wade Wilson is Deadpool. Deadpool, you might know him from the films, but the way we did him in the comics, especially when I did it, he was very tortured. He was somebody who wanted to be a superhero but was ill-equipped to do so. And he's ill-equipped to do so in the movies also, but it was done a little bit differently. And I feel like all the characters I've put stuff, heroes and villains, right? You put your own stuff into it. Wade is a character who's always struggled with, can I do the right thing? Or every time he thinks he does the right thing, somehow he gets screwed over. It all comes from that place of we aspire to be better. Sometimes the world isn't fair, just not understanding that. I think also because he is, by his own design, sort of prefers to act like an idiot, like he prefers to be a child. Stan Lee said that Spider-Man uses comedy as a shield because of being afraid or whatever. Wade Wilson uses it as a weapon. And that's very much kind of how I would use humor for myself, growing up, digging at other people that, I felt less than and, trying to cut them down or to defend myself, So yeah, I'm constantly looking for how can I get my life into these characters?
Spidey and Deadpool get along so well now, right?
Yeah, Spidey. Well, mostly, yeah, they've gotten along better. Yeah, because generally Spider-Man does not like Deadpool, but it's the whole killing thing throws him off. But when I wrote Superman, like the editor would periodically call up and say, "How are things going at home?" And then I got it. Why? Why are you asking? And because the focus of my book was Lois and Clark as a young couple, like even though they had been married for a long time. And he's like, well, there's just some stuff that's coming up. And sometimes the dialogue was directly cribbed from things that were happening at home. So every once in a while, Gina would be like, why? Why is that in the book? Why did you put that in? But yeah, I am one of those people that I take my life and I remix it and put it in immediately.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
It was a great question. And is Kevin Denson here? That's Kevin. Do you have a question? If not, I wanted to ask something you told me in research.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
So you're part of Man of Action.
Yep.
Man of Action is you, Joe Casey, and a few other people.
Yep.
I wondered, because as we kind of done growing up, what is it like making a character in like a series that's part of a group? It's not like a comic book where it's like you and the artist. It's you and like several other people who are just not adapted to a TV series, which is all other things. What is that process? What was that process?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. It's a great question. Yeah. So Man of Action is myself, Joe Casey, Stephen T. Siegel, and Duncan Rula. So it's the four of us. We all met doing comic books. We all worked at Marvel together. We met in the X office. Then we went over to DC together. I met Steve literally 2 weeks before I got married. Like that summer was like graduated, got the X-Men, and got married. Like it was a very good summer. And so we've been friends since then. We're all very tight. And we sold Ben 10 because we were sitting, I was saying before we came out that my career has been a lot of being in the right place at the right time and a lot of luck. And there had been a lot of comic book creators who were not treated very well by Hollywood. Maybe deservedly so sometimes, like maybe they didn't have the chops, but just in general, we were looked down on as like not real writers. So we thought, if we make a company, maybe people will treat us differently in Hollywood. All those guys live in LA. I've gotten to hold that here. And everybody had come out to be maybe work in film or work in TV. Everybody had different ideas. So we were doing this crazy comic book thing. We got ourselves a table at San Diego Comic-Con, kind of in like what we called the Dirt Mall at the time. There was like somebody next to us trying to sell their independent horror movie and just showing the same trailer on loop. And I mean, I can still remember, oh, Jeff, no, like it was burned into my brain after 72 hours of it. But while we were there, one of those magazines that might have been on the shelf back in the day was called Wizard Magazine. It was a trade magazine for comics. And one of the folks who worked at Wizard knew us, and he came over and he co-created a show called Robot Chicken. And so Robot Chicken,
Seth Green and
Matt Senreich, who is the guy that we knew. So Matt, so Robot Chicken is Ben 10's grandfather in a weird origin story wise. So he came over and said Cartoon Network has asked us to do a show for kids, and we don't do that. So they want to meet comic book people. Are you interested? We said absolutely. So we met the guy. The producer was very Hollywoody. And so we said, all right, well, he said the same thing. There are four of you guys. How does this work? And we said, we're just got a million ideas. We'll pitch you 20 ideas in 20 minutes. And that sounded great. He was like a finger gun guy. So all right. And then we had to make 20 ideas. And that was how the group worked. We would just we would just say yes to things because one of the four of us would usually have an idea. We wrote a video game called X-Men Legends. We came to that because Joe Casey was on the X-Men. They asked him to write a video game. He didn't know how, but I love games. Duncan played games. That was how we got it. And that was like an 800-page script or something. We figured it out. None of us knew how to do it. We just figured it out. So we wrote all these ideas. We now know each other so well that if something works, we just go, yeah, that works. There's not an ego involved in that way in the creative process of it. Back in the day, we used to wrestle for ideas a little bit more and fight for them, but we all kind of could agree, even if your idea was not my taste, I could tell if it could work. And that was sort of how we did it. So then we came up with our ideas and literally had a timer. And if anybody went long, we hit a bell and that was the end of your pitch, and this guy was very into that. And if I said, hey, werewolves and they're in jet fighters, and he was like, nope, I hate werewolves. Okay, great. And then one of those ideas turned out to be Ben 10. Another one of those ideas was Generator X. Another one of those ideas was what became Zach Storm. We had a lot in that particular meeting. And then we came back and then we started developing it. And that development process took a couple of years because originally the concept was that Ben would trade places with himself from an alternate universe where in that universe he had powers, which now almost sounds like a normal idea.
Sounds like everything everywhere all at once.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Like now it's a concept people understand. And 20 years ago, they were like, kids are not going to understand this. We're like, well, okay. So then we did a superhero version. He turned into superheroes, very similar to something called Dial H for Hero, which people already were, accusing Ben 10 of. But we were like, yeah, they had too many superheroes at the time. And then aliens came up. And we would just sit around, the four of us, and what powers would be cool? What would be a fun way for a kid to use it? We knew Ben was going to be not your typical squeaky clean kid. We wanted very much much like Deadpool, like a kid that was like real, like he was real and flawed and was going to use the watch to steal the prize out of the cereal box and then have to give it back. Like he wasn't super responsible. We wanted him to learn that. And that's really, that's how we do it. And sometimes it works great. And sometimes it's really stressful and we do get in each other's faces. And it's kind of like working with your brothers at this point, because we've been together for well over 25 years. So it's been a good ride, and they're a good bunch of guys. So long answer to your question, bud.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin also, in giving me some research, he said that some X-Men issues actually reference Freeport High School.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like one by Joe Casey where it takes place at Freeport High School. And I don't remember which issue.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's entirely possible. He probably asked me at one point, like, "Oh, where did you go to school?" He's from Tennessee, so I can't do his voice without going, "I wonder." But that's right. Joe Casey. But he, we always. I mean, there's so much stuff in there. I put a lot of Freeport people in books, and I don't know if any of you knew Rob Yarmola, but Rob Yarmola was certainly a fixture in our lives, and he always was like, okay, when do I get to be in a book? And so there'd be a Captain Yarmola and there'd be an Officer Yarmola, and he was in books all the time. I put a lot of my very good friends in books, their name. Spider-Man right now has a brand new character that's the combination of two Freeport guys. I have two of the names of my oldest friends. So it's, happens all the time.
But to be clear, Leanne, Karen, none of the library people are in the comic books.
I mean, you might have to go back and look.
Okay, we'll have to look. Iysaiah, who works here, great artist in his own right. I think he had a question. Yeah,
Yes.
please ask.
Yeah. So, co-founding your business, Man of Action, what are some of the challenges that you had faced, with your friends as you were creating this business and trying to find the right team, to work on your projects and, create like the powerhouse that you had to, make those projects into reality?
Oh, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, to call us a team is really stretching it. I mean, we were really literally just four guys that were sort of going, oh, let's try it this way. Like we really had no idea. We just thought, we thought we could be treated better. That turned out to not be true at all. A sad lesson. And then it was, we all always did our own things individually as well. And we were very lucky that Duncan could draw. Duncan's an excellent artist. So in the beginning, anytime we would pitch a new show, he'd be the one drawing the pitch packets. So it really helped keep things contained and manageable. Once you sell a show to Cartoon Network, then it's not yours anymore. You get to stay on and develop it to some degree, but it's the executives and then the people they put on. So those original Ben 10 aliens, even though Duncan had done a bunch of designs, artist named Dave Johnson did all those designs. He was on staff at the time. and then it goes to hundreds of people, once you have scripts, and it goes to animators and the directors. And so we, in the early days, didn't have a lot of hands-on to choose, to pick those teams. As things have evolved, we have a little bit more power and we have a little more control over the things that we work on. But often we're going to other people's projects, so if it's their money, their umbrella, their characters, we don't have as much say as we'd like. Luckily, there's always somebody who wants to get into comic books. So we're constantly being approached by new talent for comics. We are plugged into a lot of people. Once you're around long enough, you get to know artists and know them for a long time. This has only recently struck me because I haven't gone to comic conventions for a while. And I started realizing how many people I know, that I've known for like 20 years. I go, oh, this is awesome. It's wonderful to be part of that community. So the four of us, we've traded artists at different times. You should meet so-and-so. It wouldn't work for me, but it would work great for you. Those kinds of things happen all the time. And everyone has things they like to do. So like Joe Casey's a musician. If somebody needed a background track for something, he would just do it. It was a really wonderful collaborative lab for all of us, which is really what I tell anybody who's trying to get into these things is finding your peers, whoever they are, whatever level you're at. You try to find the people that are at that same level or barely above, and you just work together, pressure test things, try ideas and see what sticks. And then take it out to the world. And that's what we did for as much as we could.
Thank you.
Yeah. So to recap something that I just heard, each of the people from Man of Action have a specialty or a thing that they're specializing in that the others can't necessarily do as well.
Yeah, I would say so. We all approach story somewhat differently. Some like Steve Siegel's really amazing with structure and also loves breaking structure. So the instant he's comfortable with the story structure, he'll go, I don't want to do that anymore. So now I'm taking a story idea and I'm chopping it up with scissors, literally, and then throwing it in the air, and then I'll recombine it, and that'll be how I write the story. Like, he'll do things like that. Duncan Rouleau is exceptional with big ideas.
Mm-hmm.
If you need the craziest, most bonkers idea, Duncan will do it, and then he can draw it. That's a wonderful thing. So trying to find the blind spots that each of us have and then fill those in is part of, I think, why we've been able to do this for so long.
Does Steve Siegel say his name like that so Steven Seagal is differentiated?
Yes.
Okay.
Steve has had people show up at his house looking for Steven Seagal multiple times. Sadly, yes. Yeah.
He is in Russia. I can tell you how I know, but we'll tell you. Did anyone else have a question for Joe? Do I see any hands? Oh, yes, please.
So Joe, I love the story that you've been telling, Jeff, of all the facets of this. So much relatable. Having known you for so long. My question to you is, a few years ago, you did Poughkeepsie, and you described working among the process is a very social, democratic process, meaning it's not one person running the ball. You obviously have a lot of say that you have to relinquish control. You have to find the right atmosphere, card, have work, and film is like that too. So my question is, are we going to get another film project from you about Poughkeepsie to the Revenge?
Oh, thanks. Thank you. I absolutely, I want to do a feature film very badly. That's, in comics, there aren't a ton of mountains that I want to still climb, but film is one. I've written a couple of films. One of them got made. That's very exciting.
My son and I cried.
Thank you. I'm very lucky to get to do that. It was adapted it was protected very early on by the producers, Chris Columbus, and that opened up doors that would not have typically been open for
Home Alone, Christopher Columbus.
Home Alone, Harry Potter, Christopher Columbus. And so he was the producer on the film and protected me on that. So that was really great. But I would still love to direct. So yeah, absolutely. The Poughkeepsie was sort of it's too long to be a short film. I'm not really great at editing myself down. That I could use a lot of help on, but I love the process. That type of collaboration is so fun. You have all these very talented people together, and let's try to make a cool thing. But eventually, somebody has to make the decisions. I don't like to always be in that chair, but when I'm directing and it's my baby, then I'm just like, yeah, I'm the one. I have to put on that hat. And I was surprised at how much I enjoyed making those decisions and how well I get people to respond. And also just being a little chill. Like my anxiety and my freakouts alone in my office is fine. But on a set, people are already stressed. So you just want to try to be a smooth captain of the ship. And I learned that from people I worked for. Gina's brother being one of them. Just watching people who they go, we're trying to entertain people. We shouldn't be knocking ourselves out and getting hurt and being unsafe. And I've been on the sets where it's the other way too. So I try to create that kind of environment. But I absolutely love it. I would try to do more. Yeah, it's direct a feature and probably create a video game from scratch. Those would be the two things I'd really like to still do.
Did I hear correctly that Joe was at your bar mitzvah?
Joe and I have known each other since Joe was among my earliest friends. And there's about a 2-year age difference. And Joe and a mutual friend I was friends with, his older brother, Kevin, and younger brother, Jeff, who were inseparable for many years. And Joe, even back then, so forgive me if I get a little misty. When Joe talked about his horror comics, Joe gave me a lot of the more disturbing comics because he wanted them out of the house. And,
Wait, Joe, is this
Joe?
correct?
Everyone in our era grows up knowing Adam West and Batman,
Sure.
and the Saturday morning cartoons. But Joe really introduced me to that era of '60s comics, and where Stan Lee and EC Comics, a lot of EC Comics, were going, and there was something much edgier in this vibe. And Joe and Jeff and I mean, whether it was trips to Frost Valley or sleepovers or just walking through the neighborhood, Joe would have these amazing, it was sort of like a cross between storytelling and Dungeons and Dragons. Joe would tell these amazing stories of how things would work in this world building that he would do. And Jeff would throw something in and I'd throw something in and no, that takes a story off. That's a distraction. But Joe knew where the story goes. He understood conflict was a healthy thing for story. And had such a great way of handling those conversations that I years later, I picked up comics again as an adult, and I would read a Supergirl comic. You go, oh, this is great. Oh, Joe Kelly, I knew something like that growing up. Put it down. Son discovers Ben 10. He has all the Ben 10 stuff. He's loving Ben 10. And I'm like, oh, cool. I could raise him on Batman, but he's grooving on this. We're good. He climbs the walls as Spider-Man. And then years later, find out that was the Joe Kelly.
The Joe Kelly. So I promised some compliments up front. Are you maxed out, or is there room for more compliments?
I can leave it to your discretion.
Okay, so the next person asks a question. Throw in 1 or 2 compliments. Do you have a question?
Oh,
Yes, you don't have to compliment.
I wanted to ask how's your writing been influenced by a lot of the recent films that have been released about superheroes, or has it been influenced by recent trends and other projects, for example, K-pop, additional pamphlets or Arcane, any League of Legends story? Just wanted to kind of ask that question of how have you noticed how the success of other projects and has it influenced your writing and just the general state of the workplace and time and so on?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I mean, I think we all take in influences from different places. I like film is obviously huge for me. My reading is almost exclusively manga, and specifically Shonen Jump stuff. I mean, not only I do read some other things, but my son introduced me to certain things. I was already reading stuff kind of prior to him getting me turned on to One Piece and for things like that. But that's pretty much what I read. So now that stuff is infiltrating my brain, the storytelling techniques for Spider-Man, which is drastically different. Luckily, Spidey's a bi-weekly comic, and so we have 20-page chapters. So the pacing of manga is actually a little closer to what I enjoy. So we're able to do some of that. If we were weekly, it would be a 1-to-1. But on a monthly comic, you can't. It feels cheap to do it that way. It's not enough story. But the films, I sort of find myself inspired by weirder stuff because the superhero stuff is things that I already know very well, given to the audience in a new way. I'm much more influenced by, strange Korean films or something, or very cool animation like Arcane. K-pop is fun. I like all that stuff, and again, anime that I watch with my son absolutely infiltrates my brain. I love maximalism and melodrama now. And I used to maybe poo-poo on the melodrama. I think when you trained in writing, because you're in the halls of academia, it's like, well, let's talk about the classics and let's make sure everything is, as opposed to going like, what? Why do people love soap operas? Like, they love them for a reason, and they're on every day, and they work for a reason. And my department changed over the course of time, which is great. It became a lot more accessible to that stuff. So so I'm fully informed by all these crazy things that I take in. But I would say it's anime and manga, the two that are doing it the most right now.
To add to that, I think that's very refreshing, because you find a lot of artists, when they're able to turn a hobby or passion into a career, they hit that point where they go, when I'm not working, I don't want any time at all with that hobby. That is my work. Did you have a period where you entirely avoided manga, comics, etc., and then found your love again, or did you consistently stay into it?
I would say that I don't read a lot of American comics and haven't for a long time. Not because I don't like it, but I think it is a little bit of the work-life balance of, well, if I do this as my job, I don't know if this is what I want to do for fun necessarily. So to read Japanese comics feels so vastly different to me that I can separate it. But no, I've never really stepped away from any of that stuff. I mean, I generally enjoy it all. I'm a crazy pop culture weirdo and like all that stuff. It's hard to live in this world and not like it. Same with animation. I mean, I watch a lot of animated shows.
Sure.
Mostly from overseas though. Some stuff from here. But yeah, I'm in it. And then I try to read a book once in a while without pictures. I'm not always successful. And film. I film the whole gamut. Every indies, foreign films. I love it all.
Point of curiosity, I also have a lot of my favorite bands and TV shows it might have been made by an American or a Canadian, but it wasn't really popular in their home country. It was overseas where it found its audience. For you, were the hits the same everywhere in the world? Were there particular things that were overlooked here that actually did well in Asia or Europe?
That we made?
Yes.
Oh, the Man of Action made? Well, Ben 10 was a crazy phenomenon. Nobody could have ever predicted that was lightning in a bottle. Again, right place, right time. On in every country, translated in every language. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And we still get letters from kids that are sort of discovering Ben 10. And it's fun to watch it move. Like, if there's a heat map of like current Ben 10 fans, it's like, for a while it's India, and then it's Pakistan, and then it's South America. Like, the kids are finding it at different spots. It's always interesting. Generator Rex was a show that we did after Ben 10, and it was so scary it was banned in Germany. So that was a special badge of honor. We scared the Germans.
It was Adult Swim, right?
No, it was a regular Cartoon Network show, but we were trying to age it up slightly. It was sort of the goal. We was trying to make it slightly more like mature with quotes around it, because Ben had aged up a little bit. So we're like, oh, let's try and just start a show that way. That show didn't have as much life. And then every once in a while, we do work on things that don't really land here. There was this Zach Storm Super Pirate, which is a little bit more of a bouncy, younger show. And recently somebody was asking us for season 2, again, from overseas, a kid who discovered it in Europe. Streaming has changed the dynamic of Hollywood in a lot of ways. The positive of it is that so people can find things in ways they couldn't have before, if they keep them on the air, which is, the story for another time. But when they keep things in their streaming vault and you're allowed to see them, there can be a long tail on shows, and that's not something people used to have. If you didn't buy the DVD or the VHSs back in the day, the shows disappeared.
Sure. So, being the band in Germany, one of my favorite bands of all time, Kiss, their logo is banned in Germany. So I think it's a great list of interesting overseas bands. Were there any other bands that you remember
Where we were banned?
of your content? It's okay if the answer is no.
I don't know, but I was invited once to a comic convention in the Middle East at very late in the game. Somebody had dropped out, and I thought, oh, this could be really cool. I've never been there. That'd be awesome. And then I looked up their sort of like culture, like the page of the Ministry of Culture, and right at the top, they had a list of banned things, and Deadpool was number one. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't go. So that's the only international trip that I flaked on. Otherwise, I've gone all over the place. But yeah, I other than Deadpool being banned, which I didn't make them up, so I can't totally take responsibility for that.
We'll follow up to that, and then we'll see if any other audience questions, and then everyone gets out of here. And my question is, because the bucket list or the list of things that you're still hoping to do has come up a few times, and you mentioned wanting to direct, things of that nature. Are there still places that you're hoping to go, whether it's for a festival, whether it's for a conference, whether it's for filming on set? Do you have that list of destinations?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much, if anybody invites me, I'll go. So, for travel, I love travel. And I've been, again, very lucky. I mean, when you're asking before about how comics and pop culture have changed,
Sure.
Just the fact that I can be invited to Istanbul for a comic convention is a crazy thought. I'm going to Spain at the end of the month for comics. I mean, I've gotten to travel the world all because of comics, which has been unbelievable. Very, very, very lucky to get to do it. And I would say that I would still, I mean, there are a million places I still want to go, honestly, that I haven't been yet. I'll go anywhere, honestly. That's as far as travel. I mean, I would love to publish work in Japan. That would be amazing. I would like to go to Japan again. I've gone for vacation, but I have been there in a work capacity. And there was a mangaka who just came out to New York. He was here for Anime NYC, and got to meet him. He does a book called Kagurabachi, which you probably wouldn't know unless you're really into it. But he's 25, this kid, and it's like the top book, right? It's kind of wild. Everybody loves this book, and it was very fun to get to meet him. I've had one thing. I Kill Giants is published in a bunch of languages. We have that published in Japan, but to do an original work in Japan would be really special. I would like to go to the Angoulême Film Festival, the Comics Festival, rather. Angoulême is like a huge French festival. That's one I've never been to. One that I just kicked off the list 2 years ago was Lucca in Italy, which is another really excellent festival. The European festivals are so cool because here, a lot of our comic conventions are giant marketplaces for plastic. And sometimes I get bummed about that. Like I walk around, I see some cool stuff, and then I just see like a lot of things being sold. And that's a little bit of a bummer for me sometimes. I don't get to see new art or new artists or people enjoying creativity.
Uh-huh.
The European festivals tend to be actual festivals where you're really just there to enjoy art and artists and the relationship with the audience, and get to do talks like this that are a little bit more intimate. And so that's why I always say yes. But the experience overseas has always been really incredible because it's not, are we selling Funko Pops? And I like Funko Pops, fine.
Yeah.
But that's not what they're there for. They're there to talk about art. So to get to have anything, in those markets is, it's always going to be a goal. And sometimes it's a grass is greener thing. I'm like I said, I've been lucky enough to work on all these things I loved since I was a child. But to have an original graphic novel that's fully painted in French is a big deal for me. And I'm excited to have them because in France, they don't treat comics like little floppy books. They're these giant, beautiful albums that are all fully painted and take like 4 years to make 40 pages. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I have one of those, and that's very exciting. And if I could do a proper manga, that would be unbelievable. But I can't work that hard. That's a lot of work. Those folks work incredibly hard. I don't know if I have that stamina.
You've come a long way from the magazine room up to Freeport Memorial Library. Do we have any other questions? Okay, yes, in the gray shirt.
One question that I would like to ask is, are there any characters out there of, all different levels that you'd love to see, by mash up on, to book, to harvest, to be like, hey, this would be great, right? They didn't have this person, it'd be a cool storyline.
Oh, that's a great question. It's always fun to, when the Marvel and DC play nice together, which happens basically every 10 years when they run out of money. They go, hey, we should do something cool like a crossover. And right now they're doing Batman Deadpool, which would have been very fun to be a part of. I don't know. It's actually a really good question. I mean, I think taking characters from the different genres and mashing them together is fun. Like for example, the creator, there's a book called My Hero Academia, and he is a humongous fan of American comics. So to take some of those kids from, class 1A and put them with Marvel superheroes would be so much fun. I mean, that would just be outstanding. Every once in a while, somebody comes to us, right now in the world of Hollywood, everybody wants established IP. And so every once in a while, they're afraid of original ideas, but if you say, oh, we have this dusty thing from 70 years ago, like maybe they'll make it. But some of those really old Hanna-Barbera shows still have like a warm spot in my heart. So, and people have done like cool Captain Caveman comics, but Captain Caveman and Deadpool seems like a really good idea. Just any of that crazy stuff from my youth, I'm happy to take it and spin it into something weird and mash it together. It's the same as when you're a kid and you just have all your toys out. You go, oh yeah, Luke Skywalker should totally hang out with Spider-Man. Let's go. That's it. That's been getting to do that is a great joy.
I think we did that story.
Yeah, we probably did.
Great question. Anybody else? Oh, yes.
Kind of random. Like being had so many how to see is to be out yourself. Do you have people you rely on your tattoos breathe?
Some of them, yeah. Some of I do have a lot of tattoos. One of these is from my artist from I Kill Giants. Some of these were put together by the artist who I use in Rock the Center. I've definitely asked. Sometimes people are surprisingly uncomfortable. They don't really want to be responsible for like a thing on your body forever. Ken was very intimidated. But generally now at this point, I don't know. I didn't start tattoos till I was very, farther along in life, like into my 40s. So I'm pretty much in that. Oh, sure, if it looks good, go for it. I don't really care. I have a giant Godzilla on this arm that's from the -1 movie, and somebody who knows the director saw it and asked if he could send a picture to him, and he couldn't believe that I got it prior to seeing the movie. I just love this Godzilla design so much. So it's pretty much just grabbing the things that make me happy now. If I have to look at it every day, it's got me.
Oscar-winning perfected.
Oscar-winning. So, thanks.
He said Chris Columbus, and I have a Jerry Potter tattoo now.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. I bet Chris Columbus would draw a nice tattoo. He's a surprisingly good artist.
Behind you in the hat.
Yeah. What can we look forward to next Deadpool?
Oh, next Deadpool movie? I don't know. That I wish I could tell you. I don't work on them. I haven't worked on the Deadpool movie. I created a lot of the stuff that you would see in the first Deadpool movie. So I created Blind Owl. I created the sort of Hell House that he gets missions from, that origin story. So there's some stuff that's in that first movie that really comes from me. But yeah, I think that's up to Ryan Reynolds. I think that's going to be a Ryan question. And unfortunately, I can't call him up.
You're thanking the credits for 1 and 2, if I recall.
2 and 3. They forgot me on number 1.
Crab salads.
3. Let's go with one more question, and then let's let Joe have a peaceful evening.
No,
Behind Kevin. Kevin, we'll take care of you later. I promise.
So as you're expanding your months report and help in your work on Spider-Man, it can help think about that they need. And the idea of the world as ancient praising in sports how it comes to forward. How you feel like that was influenced your work, especially working on characters like Spidey and Superman, given that there's such they're followed by such many characters, really unrelated characters. How do you think that they influenced your work?
that's an excellent question. I mean, so I think you've probably heard it said before. It's like comedy and horror share so much DNA, right? I mean, the way you sort of your setup and your payoff, the way they play, it's the same stuff, right? Just one of them we go, oh my God, and one of them we laugh. And so I am a big, and Sam Raimi just navigates that stuff so fluidly. Drag Me to Hell is one of my favorite horror comedies, and it's barely a comedy, but he does that so well. So for me, even a character like Superman, like if the protagonists aren't scared, we're not going to be scared. If we navigate a world where it's just a fait accompli that everything's going to be fine because it's Superman, then it's boring. And that's why people go, oh, it must be so hard to write Superman because he's so powerful. And you just decide he's not, right? You just decide, okay, I'm going to try something different. And you sort of low key power him down and then go, what is he afraid of? It's not going to be getting hit with bullets. It's losing Lois, or it's what happens if I can't find mom and pop, and then that's very relatable horror. Then it's a question of how long can you stretch the rubber band, right, before it snaps. And comics are really challenging with horror. I don't know if you read any horror books, but like sort of the old horror books were just sort of like, here's something terrifying, and they would just sort of tell you it was terrifying. It's not like Uzumaki, if you've ever read that. He's, which is just like intense and weird and atmospheric as you go through it. We're the only visual medium where you get to choose the pacing. The audience gets to participate in that regard, where you can really turn pages. And so you try to deploy that to your advantage with literal page turns and the sort of shock of what is the next crazy thing I'm going to see. Same with comedy, getting to do that as well. Set up, turn the page, punchline. So I try to keep that stuff top of mind. You were asking before about torturing, Peter. I need Peter to be scared a lot. I need Spider-Man to be scared so he can rise above that fear. And that's been a big part of the first arc that I just did. I just started in April writing Spider-Man. And his first arc is sort of a classic story and kind of a fun setup. And then things got really nuts really fast. And we just revealed that he's actually not even on the planet. He sort of got hit into space, for lack of a better term. And it's horrifying. Like, it sort of sounds goofy, but the first time you finally see Peter, he's like an animal in a cave, like, because he's had to survive on a planet by himself for so long. Luckily, I have artists that can pull that off too. That's the other thing, right? So I can do everything I want in the script. I can try to describe it, but you have to have an artist who's able to pull it off. Pepe did an incredible job with all that stuff, and John Romita Jr., who does the Earthbound stuff. Those guys, they're masters of storytelling. So you rely heavily on your artists to take this mood that you want to create, and then they have to deploy it. Uzumaki, Ito is doing it himself, right? He's laying all that stuff out. There's another book that's another manga. It's called Blood on the Tracks. It's really, really rough. It's a very rough read. It's very disturbing. But I've never felt more tense reading a comic. I mean, it's just from second one, you're like, there is something wrong with this family. I don't know what it is. And then when you find out what it is, it's pretty rough. But it's just the atmosphere and the paper and something about the way they do it. It's really wonderful. So I'm very conscious of that when I write. It's not the same way I would write for animation or for film. It's just something that we know we can deploy in comics. So I hope that answers your question. It's a little more theory and stuff, but great. Thank you.
That was a great question. And the easy closing question for you, for us to figure out and find out what's coming next from Joe Kelly, when we're allowed to know it. Is it Instagram? Is it that Joe Kelly? How do we follow you the best way possible?
Yeah, Instagram I'm pretty active on. Twitter not so much. I just kind of quickly promote things, but I'm that Joe Kelly on pretty much anything. I started a newsletter that I have not completely kept up with on Button Down. But yeah, that Joe Kelly is sort of the way to look. It's that Joe Kelly because there are a couple of notable Joe Kellys, including a baseball player and the Joe Kelly who wrote How I Met Your Mother and Ted Lasso, which I did not write, but for a little while on Apple TV they had my picture, and a lot of people were accosting us saying, "You're writing Ted Lasso?" Like, no, I'm not that Joe. I'm that Joe Kelly. So that is hence my handle.
That Joe Kelly, recognized by Nassau County, the Freeport Arts Council, the Long Island Arts Council. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for Joe. Thank you for Gina. Thank you for Leanne, Karen, everybody here at the library. And see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
And the collection of books that Regina helped curate, Joe's yearbook,
I can't believe
the comics and the manga, if you're trying to get more of that, more information here. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Oh, you said that? Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Paltrocast.